Picture yourself standing at the edge of a medieval village. The year is 1375. And the sun has just slipped below the horizon, leaving the world bathed in a velvet darkness. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You're bone tired from a day of hauling water or tending fields. Your muscles aching for rest. But as you step into a low-ceilinged cottage, the flicker of a single rushlight casting shadows on the walls. You're not preparing for the kind of sleep we chase. Today, 8 hours of unbroken oblivion, tracked by apps and haunted by anxiety. No, you're entering a world where sleep is a rhythm. A dance with the night that medieval people mastered in ways that might just make you jealous. Let me take you on a journey through their nights. A time when sleep wasn't a problem to be solved, but a natural, cherished part of life, perhaps the best rest humanity has ever known. You settle onto a straw-filled bed, the faint rustle of the mattress beneath you like a whispered lullaby. The room is quiet, save for the soft breathing of your family. Or perhaps a stranger sharing the bed. More on that later. As darkness wraps around you, you drift into what medieval people called the first sleep. A deep, restorative slumber lasting about 4 hours. Sometime around midnight, you stir, your eyes opening to the soft glow of embers in the hearth. This isn't the restless, clock-watching wakefulness of our modern nights. This is the watching hour, a time medieval people embraced as a gift. A moment of clarity and connection in the heart of the night. You might rise to stoke the fire, your movements slow and deliberate. Or share a quiet word with your spouse, your voices blending with the stillness. If you're a monk in a nearby monastery, you'd be kneeling in prayer, the silence amplifying your devotion. For about 2 hours, the world feels alive in a different way, subtle, intimate, purposeful before you return to your second sleep, resting. Until dawn's first light creeps through the shutters. This biphasic sleep, as historians call it, wasn't a quirk or a hardship, it was the heartbeat of medieval life. I stumbled across this in a crumbling archive years ago, flipping through a 15th century household guide that mentioned the time between sleeps as casually as we'd note a coffee break. It stopped me in my tracks. Here was a world where waking at 2 a.m. wasn't a failure but an opportunity. The Canterbury Tales describes characters rising between sleeps for adventures, as if it were the most ordinary thing. Town records from places like York show bakers using these hours to knead dough, the cool night perfect for fermentation. While noblewomen embroidered by candlelight, free from the day's demands. Monks, too, saw this time as sacred, their deepest prayers offered in the quiet. One 14th century physician wrote that the dreams of the first sleep could reveal hidden truths. And the waking period was ideal for pondering their meaning, though he advised against vigorous sword practice. A note that makes me chuckle imagining an overzealous knight swinging his blade in the moonlight. This wasn't just cultural, it was biological. In the 1990s, a researcher named Thomas Weir ran an experiment where people lived without artificial light for weeks. Stripped of modern distractions, their bodies naturally fell into this two-phase pattern. Waking for a couple of hours before sleeping again. It was as if our ancestors' rhythm was hardwired into us, waiting for the chance to resurface. Medieval people didn't need experiments to know this. Their lives were shaped by the sun and stars, their bodies syncing with the natural world in a way we've almost forgotten. Archaeology tells us how universal this practice was. Homes across Europe had nooks for midnight activities, with holders for rushlights. Those thin, long-burning candles that lit the way for everyone, not just the rich. A French noblewoman's letters from 1465 describe her midnight poetry, the silence, fueling her creativity, while a merchant's records note meticulous accounting done in the midnight quiet, his mind sharpest then. Even hospitals embraced this rhythm, with nurses noting that patients were most talkative and clear-minded during these hours, making it the perfect time to administer medicines or record symptoms. The watching hour wasn't just about tasks, it was a state of mind. Medieval people called it a time when prayers were answered, ideas flowed, and conversations reached profound depths. Modern sleep studies back this up, describing a state of relaxed alertness during these hours, ideal for reflection or gentle work. I think of my own sleepless nights, staring at my phone's glow, and wonder what it would be like to light a candle instead. To let my thoughts wander in that quiet clarity. It's a world where wakefulness wasn't a curse, but a gift, a moment to connect with yourself, your family, or your God. And it all began with the night itself. A darkness so profound it held the key to their rest. The medieval night was a living thing. A vast, inky expanse that swallowed the world in a way we can barely imagine. Step outside that cottage now, and you'll find no street lamps. No neon signs, just a blackness so complete it feels like a warm blanket over your senses. This darkness wasn't just a backdrop, it was the foundation of medieval sleep. A force that shaped their bodies, their culture, and their dreams. Candles were a luxury, a single beeswax one costing a day's wages for a laborer. In York, a family once squabbled over a half-burned candle in a will. Its value sparking a feud as heated as any modern inheritance drama. Even tallow candles, made from animal fat, were used sparingly. With wealthy merchants owning just 3 or 4 at a time. Light was precious, and medieval people guarded it like gold. This scarcity meant that once the sun set, the world was plunged into a darkness that reset the body's rhythms. Melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep, flowed freely without the interference of blue light, something our screens suppress by up to 85%, studies say. Medieval doctors didn't know melatonin, but they understood the connection intuitively. One wrote, "Sleep comes best to those who embrace the darkness." A line that's both poetic and prescient. Towns enforced curfews, not just for safety, but because tasks like embroidery or manuscript illumination were impossible after dark. Merchants charged extra for goods sold at night, factoring in the cost of candles. In some cities, light pollution was illegal, with fines for those who burned lights unnecessarily. A 1486 decree put it bluntly: "He who wasteth light at night steals sleep from his neighbors." Imagine trying to enforce that in our glowing cities today. Homes were built to work with this darkness. Builders used light wells and east-facing windows to capture daylight, plastering walls in light colors to reflect what little illumination was available. Wealthy homes had light cups, curved niches that amplified a single candle's glow, turning a flicker into a beacon. Monasteries went further, with darkness keepers patrolling dormitories to snuff out stray lights that might disrupt sleep. These guardians of the night were part of a culture that saw darkness not as something to conquer, but as a partner in rest. I spent a night in a reconstructed medieval cottage once, with no electricity. Just a single candle for company. The darkness was so thick it felt alive, and I slept deeper than I had in years. It made me realize how much we've lost in our quest to banish the night. This darkness sharpened other senses, too. Medieval people navigated by sound and touch, recognizing footsteps or distinguishing animals in the dark. Night watchmen could tell the time by the calls of birds or insects. A skill born of necessity. This sensory world enriched their lives, making the night a place of connection, not isolation. During the watching hour, families gathered around a single candle or fire, sharing stories or prayers. It was a time when the world slowed down, when the body and mind found harmony. But that harmony wasn't just about darkness. It was about the people you shared it with, often under the same blanket. Now, imagine climbing into that straw bed, but you're not alone. The bed creaks under the weight of 2, maybe 3. Others: family, friends, or even strangers if you're at an inn. Bed sharing in the medieval world wasn't just common, it was a way of life. A necessity that warmed both body and soul. In a time when homes lacked central heating, with stone floors radiating cold, body heat was a lifeline. But it was more than that, it was a social glue. A place where bonds were forged, deals were struck, and stories were shared, all in the quiet of the night. At a bustling inn in 15th century York, travelers were assigned to shared beds, no questions asked. A merchant might find himself next to a tanner or a pilgrim, their snores mingling with the crackle of the fire. One innkeeper was fined for giving guests separate beds when his inn wasn't full, the magistrate declaring it a waste of firewood to heat multiple rooms. When people could share warmth, hospitality meant togetherness, like it or not. One merchant grumbled about a bedmate who could wake the dead with his snoring, only to be charged extra for a private bed, perhaps the first noise cancellation fee in history. Inns even had snorers' chambers or matched sleepers by habits. A medieval version of roommate compatibility. Beds were built for this, wide and sturdy. Often 8 feet across to fit 4 adults comfortably. They were shorter, too, as people slept propped up. Believing it warded off bad dreams, sensible when nightmares could be blamed for plague or misfortune. Household guides advised placing the youngest in the middle, their warmth. Like a human furnace. Monasteries had strict rules, with monks sharing beds, but warned to maintain proper distance and dignity. One monastery fined a monk for excessive nocturnal wandering, likely for tossing and turning too much. I can't help but laugh at the thought of Brother Thomas, scolded for his restless limbs. These shared beds were social hubs. A 1478 court case hinged on a conversation overheard by a bedmate at an inn. The testimony sealing a business deal. Children slept in piles, their parents believing it built character. Nothing says resilience like dodging a sibling's midnight kick. Medical texts praised shared sleep for mental health. One physician writing, "Solitary sleep breeds solitary thoughts, while shared sleep brings shared peace." It's a far cry from our private bedrooms, where isolation is the norm. I think of my own childhood, sharing a room with my brother, those late-night whispers. Creating a bond I still cherish. Medieval people understood this, instinctively, turning necessity into connection. Architecture reflected this, with homes designed around large sleeping chambers, multiple fireplaces, and ventilation to keep air fresh for many sleepers. As heating in private rooms became common, bed sharing faded, and people reported worse sleep, missing the warmth and company. It's a reminder that sleep was as much about community as rest. But the bed itself was only part of the story. Let's explore what made it so comfortable, and the remedies that lulled them into dreams. The scent of lavender and fresh straw greets you as you sink into that shared bed. The mattress rustling softly beneath you. Medieval beds were simple wooden frames filled with straw ticks, but they were a marvel of practicality and comfort. Forget memory foam, these beds were crafted with care, layered to balance firmness and breathability. And when paired with herbal remedies from carefully tended gardens, they created a sleep environment that was natural, effective, and surprisingly luxurious. Straw ticks were an art form. Professional bedmakers, like the legendary Thomas the Soft Layer, were paid handsomely for their skill in layering straw. Just right, loose for summer's heat, tight for winter's chill. Household records from the 1400s describe the ritual of changing straw after the harvest. The old stalks recycled as animal feed or mulch. Wealthy families might swap theirs monthly, one noble noting, "Fresh straw brings fresh dreams." Wheat straw was prized for softness, rye for durability, while oat straw was shunned for attracting mice. A saying warned, "Oat straw in the bed brings 4-legged guests." These beds were economical, costing 2 days' wages for a year's supply, compared to feather beds, which could cost months of earnings and were plagued by fleas. One merchant, after a failed experiment with feathers, returned to straw, declaring it free of tiny kingdoms. Doctors noted fewer back pain complaints with straw beds, their firmness supporting posture better than our soft mattresses. The straw's breathability kept sleepers cool in summer, warm in winter, especially with shared body heat. Its faint rustle was even considered a lullaby, soothing troubled sleepers. But the real magic came from herbs. Monasteries grew sleep gardens with plants like chamomile, lavender, and valerian, supplying communities with remedies. A Yorkshire monastery boasted 15 varieties, including star's breath, likely borage. These were blended precisely: lavender with rose petals for anxiety, chamomile with hops for deep sleep. Pillow sachets, stuffed with dried herbs, were tucked into beds, their scents easing sleepers into rest. One noble's inventory listed identical sachets for rich and poor, the only difference being fancier fabric and triple the price for the wealthy.
Hospitals used herbs strategically, scenting fever wards with mint, recovery wards with lavender. A 15th century guide, The Night's Comfort, detailed hundreds of remedies, with instructions for harvesting under moonlight to enhance potency. One apothecary grumbled about customers haggling over lavender, noting they'd spend a fortune on ale but pinch pennies on peaceful sleep. Even peasants grew chamomile and mint, making sleep aids universal. Meal timing helped. 2. Without refrigeration or light, eating after sunset was impractical. Dinner was at midday, supper in the late afternoon. Physicians warned against late eating, claiming it caused nightmares and indigestion fill. Not the belly when the sun has retired. This discipline meant light stomachs at bedtime, a stark contrast to our midnight snacks. These practices, straw beds, herbal remedies, disciplined, meals created a sleep environment that worked with the body's rhythms. But there was one final piece, a way of waking and living that sealed their restful nights. As dawn breaks, sunlight spills through an east-facing window, warming your face. No alarm jolts you awake, just the soft crow of a rooster, or the distant toll of a morning bell. Medieval people didn't fight their bodies' rhythms. They let the sun, sounds, and their own internal clocks guide their waking. This natural approach, paired with a life of relentless physical activity and a refreshingly relaxed attitude towards sleep, might just be why their rest was so profound. Morning bells rang at dawn 4 a.m. In summer, 7 a.m. In winter, their predictable patterns helping bodies anticipate waking. Roosters were common, even in towns, with one merchant suing over a bird that crowed too early. Monasteries practiced gradual awakening, the first monk's soft footsteps, and prayers rousing others gently. One rule praised the gentle riser, who wakes his brothers with kindness, a world away from our blaring alarms. Homes were built to catch morning light, with beds facing east and windows channeling birdsong. Work began when people arrived, within an hour of sunrise, creating flexibility we've lost. A judge once dismissed a tardiness case, ruling that the sun and the body's readiness set the day's start. Physical activity fueled this rhythm. Farmers walked 10 to 12 miles daily, plowing fields in a medieval CrossFit. Blacksmiths swung 10-pound hammers, weavers paced miles at looms, and water carriers hauled 40 gallons daily, developing lopsided muscles that needed balancing exercises. Even nobles hunted for hours, covering miles on foot. Children worked from age 7, carrying water or herding animals, their play doubling as exercise. This constant movement meant bodies were naturally tired by evening, ready for sleep without pills or apps. But the real secret was their attitude. Medieval people didn't obsess over sleep. It was just sleep, as natural as breathing. A merchant's records describe dozing on a sack of grain during travels. No fuss about comfort. Monks nodded off during prayers, gently nudged awake. Complaints were rare, with oversleeping missing, breakfast being the biggest issue. Medical texts barely mentioned insomnia, prescribing stack hay until your arms grow heavy. They had names for rest dozing, napping, drowsing, each serving a purpose, from a fireside pause to deep slumber. This lack of anxiety was their genius. Modern research shows worrying about sleep causes insomnia, a problem they sidestepped by not overthinking it. Their sleep wasn't a project or a status symbol. It was life, woven seamlessly into their days. As I sit here, surrounded by screens and schedules, I envy their simplicity. They had darkness, community, and the wisdom to let sleep come naturally. Maybe, by rediscovering their ways, we can find our own path to peaceful nights. If this journey through medieval sleep fascinated you, drop a comment below. Have you ever tried sleeping without artificial light? Or do you think you could handle sharing a bed with a snoring stranger? Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more dives into history's hidden secrets. Let's keep exploring the past together.